I work in a crematorium. Not exactly the kind of job people brag about at parties, but it pays the bills and, in a strange way, it gives me perspective on life. Most folks can't imagine what goes on behind those heavy doors. They see the chapel, the flowers, maybe the reception room where soft music plays. But the back area? That's a world nobody talks about. Stainless steel tables, the hum of the furnace, the paperwork that never ends. Death, reduced to a process. At first, I thought I'd get used to it quickly. And I did, in some ways. The quiet of the prep room became normal. The routine of checking tags, filling out logs, starting the machine, normal. Families would come, grieving, angry, broken, and I'd be the quiet guy in the background making sure everything happened the way it was supposed to. Not glamorous, not heroic, just steady. But no matter how much you think you've seen it all, there's always one family that changes everything. For me, it was the Delgado family. Their father had passed suddenly, and they came to us insisting on a private viewing before cremation. Nothing unusual there. But what they wanted after that was unlike anything I'd ever dealt with in my career. The first meeting was tense from the start. The daughter, Rosa, did all the talking. She was sharp, direct, and clearly used to getting her way. Her brothers, Miguel and Tomas, hovered behind her, arms crossed, glaring at me like I'd already failed them before we'd even begun. Their mother sat silent in the corner, clutching a rosary so tightly I could hear the beads click. "We want him to look exactly how he looked when he was alive," Rosa said. "Not just peaceful. Alive. Like he's about to laugh." I nodded slowly. "We can present him respectfully. A natural look, softened features, clothing you provide." "No," she cut me off. "Not natural. Smiling. Eyes open, mouth turned up. Just like this." She shoved a photo at me. Their father, maybe 30 years younger, grinning wide, eyes bright. I froze. Because I knew exactly what she was asking and exactly why I couldn't do it. "We don't prepare remains with open eyes," I said carefully. "It isn't sanitary, and it doesn't look the way you think it will. A forced smile also, well, it won't look right. I can soften his expression, make him appear at peace. But I can't replicate this." Miguel slammed his hand on the table. "So what are you saying? You won't do it?" I kept my voice calm, steady. "I'm saying it's not allowed. And more importantly, it wouldn't give you the memory you think. You'd regret it." The room went ice cold. Rosa's eyes narrowed. Tomas muttered something under his breath that I couldn't catch, but it sounded like a curse. Their mother didn't look at me at all, just at the photo, tears sliding silently down her face. I thought the meeting was over. I thought they'd cool down, accept the boundaries. But what I didn't know was that this was just the beginning. That their demands would escalate. That my refusal would turn me into their enemy. And that in a few days, during their father's service, I'd be accused of something so outrageous it nearly destroyed my entire life. The next few days leading up to the service were some of the longest of my life. I dealt with demanding families before, people who wanted impossible things, people who thought money could bend rules, people who thought grief gave them permission to treat staff like dirt. But the Delgados weren't just demanding. They were relentless. Rosa called the office at least 3 times a day. Each time her voice was sharper, more insistent. "You don't understand. This isn't about policy. This is about honoring my father. He deserves to look like he did when he was alive. If you can't do that, why are we even paying you?" She would hang up before I could finish a sentence. Miguel showed up twice, unannounced, hovering around the prep area, peeking through the small window like he owned the place. The second time, I had to ask him firmly to step back. He leaned in close to the glass and mouthed, "Do your job right." Then he walked away. Inside the prep room, their father lay as peacefully as I could make him. I cleaned him, dressed him in the suit they'd provided, a navy jacket, polished shoes, a crisp tie. Everything by the book. His expression was softened, neutral. To me, he looked dignified. To them, I knew it wouldn't be enough. The morning of the service, they came early. Rosa marched straight to the casket, Tomas trailing behind like a bodyguard. She looked down, and I braced myself. Her lips curled. "This is wrong," she snapped. "His eyes should be open. He should be smiling. I told you what we wanted." Tomas muttered, louder this time, "Lazy. Doesn't care." I kept my voice calm. Always calm. "Rosa, I explained before. What you're asking isn't possible. It won't look natural, and it's not permitted. I've prepared him respectfully. Dignified." Miguel joined them, glaring at me. "Respectful? He looks dead." That word cut through the room like a knife. A couple of their cousins, already seated in the chapel, turned their heads. The mother began sobbing quietly, covering her face with the rosary. Rosa's eyes burned into me. You think you know better than us? This is our father. We told you how he should look. You ignored us. I wanted to say 100 things. That my job wasn't about playing dress up with death. That I wasn't their enemy, I was the one making sure this process had dignity. That grief was twisting their demands into something grotesque. But all I said was, I've done everything I could within the rules. I'm sorry it's not what you pictured. Her hand trembled as she jabbed the photo at me again. You should have made him look like this. Exactly like this. That was the moment the first guest walked in, heard the raised voices, and saw Rosa shove the photo into my chest. From that second on, I knew the whispers would spread. And they did faster than I could imagine. By the time the service began, half the room was already glancing at me sideways. I stood at the back, invisible as always, but this time every eye seemed to track me. I could feel Miguel's glare like a spotlight, Tomas muttering to anyone who would listen. Rosa sat stiff, her arms crossed, her mouth pressed tight. And then, just as the final prayer ended, Miguel stood up. He pointed at me in front of everyone. This man disrespected my father. He refused to honor him the way we asked. He treated our family like garbage. The room erupted. Some gasped. Some murmured. A few even nodded along. I froze. Because in this line of work, respect is everything. Once they decide you don't have it, you're finished. And standing there, with a chapel full of witnesses and the Delgado family painting me as a villain, I realized I wasn't just in for a bad day. I was in for a war. The chapel was packed wall to wall. By the time the priest finished his final blessing, I could already feel the tension humming like static in the air. I've seen grief take people in strange ways, shouting, fainting, collapsing to the floor, but that morning I knew this wasn't grief anymore. This was anger, sharpened and aimed directly at me. Miguel's outburst had stirred the crowd. People were whispering, side-eyeing me like I was some kind of villain standing in the shadows. Even the priest looked uneasy, glancing between me and the family as if he wasn't sure whether to close the service or prepare for a fight. Then Rosa stood. Her heels clicked against the marble as she walked up to the casket. She leaned down, stroked her father's hair, and then spun toward me with fire in her eyes. Look at him, she said loudly enough for the whole chapel. He looks wrong. He doesn't even look like himself. We begged you to fix it, and you refused. A low rumble of agreement rolled through the benches. Heads nodded. Someone muttered, "That's a shame." I felt heat rising to my face, but I kept my tone even. Ma'am, I treated your father with dignity. With respect. I cannot do the things you requested. Cannot, or will not. Rosa snapped, cutting me off. That was when Tomas pushed back his chair and strode toward me. He was bigger than his siblings, built like he worked construction his whole life. His eyes were hard, his fists balled. He stopped a foot away, chest puffed out, and hissed, "You think you can disrespect our father and walk away? You think we won't make sure people know what you are?" Every eye was on us. My training screamed at me, "Stay calm. Don't touch him. Don't escalate." I took a small step back, palms open. "Sir, I don't want trouble. I'm here to help your family." But grief and rage don't listen. Tomas suddenly shoved forward, trying to grab my suit jacket. Instinct kicked in, I stepped aside, quick, pulling away before he could latch on. His foot hit the edge of the carpet runner, slipped, and in an instant his body pitched forward. The sound was sharp, a heavy thud as he went sprawling across the aisle, crashing into the side of the casket with his shoulder. The casket rocked dangerously, the lid clattering. Gasps filled the room. Someone screamed. Tomas groaned, clutching his arm. Rosa shrieked, rushing to him. Miguel bolted forward, pointing at me again. "You pushed him." Everyone saw it. My stomach dropped. No, I didn't touch him. He came at me. He slipped. But it didn't matter. In that charged, grief-stricken room, perception was truth. To them, the mortician had just shoved a grieving son into his own father's casket. And in that moment, I knew my life as I'd known it was over. The chapel descended into chaos in seconds. Rosa screamed at me, Tomas cursed through gritted teeth as he clutched his shoulder, Miguel kept shouting, he pushed him. Everyone saw it. People gasped, some rushed forward to help, others pulled out their phones like vultures circling fresh meat. And there I was, standing frozen at the back of the aisle, my hands up like some kind of criminal caught in the act. The priest tried to calm the room, raising his hands, urging everyone to sit, but no one listened. Rosa turned to the crowd, her voice trembling but loud, "This man disrespected my father and now attacked my brother." Heads nodded, whispers spread like wildfire, and I could already feel the story writing itself in their minds. The director of the crematorium rushed over, his face pale. He tried to smooth things over. It was an accident, let's not jump to conclusions, but by then Tomas had already told 3 different versions of what happened, each one worse than the last. By the time paramedics arrived to check his shoulder, the rumor was gospel. The mortician had snapped, lost his temper, and shoved a grieving son during his own father's funeral. The police showed up minutes later. Not lights and sirens, just 2 officers walking in with that weary look cops get when they know they're about to step into family drama. They pulled me aside while everyone else was still buzzing. "Tell us what happened," one officer said, notebook ready. I swallowed hard, my voice shaking despite myself. "He came at me. I didn't touch him. He slipped. Ask anyone who was close enough, they'll tell you the same." But when the officer turned to the Delgado family, Miguel pointed straight at me. He shoved him. Right in front of all of us. Rosa backed him up immediately, her voice thick with tears. Even Tomas, groaning on a stretcher, managed to mutter, "He pushed me." I looked around desperately, searching for a friendly face. A couple of guests avoided my eyes. One man opened his mouth like he wanted to speak, then looked at Rosa and shut it again. Silence is powerful, and in that silence, their story became the only one. The officers didn't cuff me, but they made it clear. "We'll file a report. Don't leave town." As they walked out, Rosa's voice cut through the noise one last time. "We'll make sure everyone knows what kind of monster you are." And she meant it. By the next morning, the story had already spread. I woke up to messages from friends, co-workers, even distant relatives. Screenshots of Facebook posts filled my phone. One read, "He couldn't even show respect at a funeral. Disgusting." Another, "Crematorium staff assaulted a grieving family, boycott them." At work, the director pulled me aside. His face was gray, tired. "I don't know how we're going to come back from this," he muttered. "People are already calling, asking if it's true. Some are threatening to cancel services. Do you understand what that means?" I did. I understood too well. My job wasn't glamorous, but it was built on trust, quiet, invisible trust. And now, in the eyes of the community, that trust was gone. All because one family demanded the impossible, and because I'd refused to play along. But deep down, a darker thought began to creep in. Maybe this wasn't just grief. Maybe the Delgados wanted me ruined. And if that was true, I had no idea how far they'd go. The week after the funeral felt like a slow-motion collapse of everything I'd built. At first, it was just whispers, neighbors giving me quick looks at the grocery store, families in the chapel lowering their voices when I walked by. Then it turned into open suspicion. The first cancellation came on Monday. A family who had already signed paperwork called to say they'd be taking their loved one elsewhere. They didn't give details, but I didn't need them. I saw Rosa's Facebook post later that afternoon. "We trusted the crematorium to honor our father. Instead, the staff mocked him and attacked my brother. Please, don't make the same mistake." It had dozens of shares, hundreds of comments. By Tuesday, there were 2 more cancellations. The receptionist started looking at me like I carried some contagious disease. On Wednesday, I overheard a florist making a delivery whisper to my boss, "That's him, isn't it? The one who shoved the son?" Everywhere I went, I felt eyes on me. Every cough in a waiting room, every glance in a store, it all felt pointed. I stopped going out except for work. Even at home, I started double-checking my locks before bed. Then came the calls. At first, they were hang-ups. Then muttered voices. "We know what you did. Monster." One night around midnight, my phone lit up with a private number. I answered, half asleep, only to hear someone breathing on the line, slow and heavy. Then a laugh before the call dropped. When I told my boss, he sighed like the weight of the world was on his shoulders. "I think you should take some time off," he said, not looking me in the eye. I shook my head. "If I leave now, it'll look like I'm guilty. Like I'm running." "It already looks that way," he muttered. I wanted to scream at him, "Don't you believe me?" But I bit it back. He wasn't the enemy. He was just another casualty of this storm. That night, I sat in the prep room long after everyone else left. The hum of the furnaces was the only sound. I stared at the stainless steel tables, the empty chairs, the rows of paperwork waiting for signatures. This room had always been my refuge, the one place where grief and chaos outside couldn't touch me. But now it felt hostile, like even the walls knew my days here were numbered. I thought about quitting, packing up, leaving town. But where would I go? What would I do? This wasn't just a job, it was my whole identity. And if I walked away, the Delgados would win. Their story would become the only story. That was when my phone buzzed again. Another private number. Against my better judgment, I answered. A low voice whispered, "Careful. Graves aren't the only things that burn." Then silence. I sat there in the prep room, heart hammering, staring at the flickering fluorescent lights above. For the first time, I wasn't just worried about my job. I was worried about my life. By Thursday morning, I finally caved and went to the police station. The sleepless nights, the phone calls, the whispers, it was eating me alive. I told myself if I could just get the threats on record, maybe someone would take me seriously. The detective who met me was the same woman from the funeral. Mid-40s, sharp eyes, the kind of person who could sniff out lies for a living. She let me talk, but the longer I went on, the more I saw her expression harden. Anonymous calls, whispers, a text or two. But no direct names, no recordings, no evidence, she said finally, closing her notebook with a snap. It's unfortunate, but unless you can show us something concrete, there's not much we can do. I leaned forward, desperate. They're trying to ruin me. They said I shoved him, but I didn't even touch him. You saw how chaotic it was, it could have been a slip. Her gaze didn't soften. That's for civil court now. My advice? Stay quiet, stay put, and let your lawyer handle it. It was like hitting a brick wall. I called Harris that afternoon. He didn't sound surprised. This is exactly what I told you. They've built their narrative. Now you need to build yours. Find people who'll testify. Find guests who were there. Anyone who'll say you didn't touch Tomas. The thought made my stomach twist. I'd seen those guests' faces, half of them looked ready to believe the worst of me just to keep the family happy. But Harris was right. If I didn't start digging, I was finished. That night, I started making calls. Quiet ones. I asked the priest if he'd put his statement in writing. He hesitated, then agreed. I'll stand by what I saw. But the family will try to tear me down. I reached out to Raphael, one of the cousins. He surprised me. Yeah, I saw it. He slipped. You didn't push him. But if I say that out loud, Rosa will never forgive me. Do you know what it's like to cross her? His voice cracked, but then he sighed. Still, it's the truth. And maybe the truth's worth it. For the first time in days, I felt a flicker of hope. But hope is fragile. On Friday, a video hit Facebook. Grainy cell phone footage from the funeral. It showed Tomas falling forward, the casket rocking, but from the angle, it looked exactly like I'd shoved him. I hadn't touched him, but the clip cut off before you could see the space between us. The caption read, "Proof the crematorium worker attacked a grieving son." It spread like wildfire. By evening, my inbox was filled with hate. Monster. You should burn next. Quick before we make you quit. At work, the director called me in. His voice shook. We can't keep going like this. Families are pulling out. Staff are scared. You need to take leave effective today. I walked out of that office with my heart in my throat. My badge, my keys, my routine gone. Overnight, I wasn't the mortician anymore. I was the villain in a story I couldn't control. That night, alone in my apartment, I stared at the ceiling until sunrise. My phone buzzed at 3 a.m. One more private call. I answered on instinct. The voice on the other end was Rosa's. Calm, cold. You should have listened to us. Now everyone sees what you are. The line went dead. And for the first time, I wondered if they weren't just trying to ruin me. Maybe they wanted to break me completely. Losing the job felt like losing oxygen. For years, the crematorium had been my world, the routines, the quiet halls, the sense of purpose in handling the hardest moments of people's lives. Now I was just a man sitting at home, blinds drawn, scrolling through posts that painted me as a monster. Harris kept reminding me, stay calm, stay off social media, and let me handle it. But how do you stay calm when your name is trending locally with words like abuser and psycho? How do you stay quiet when strangers send you messages saying they hope you end up in the furnace next? By the second week, I realized silence wasn't saving me. The Delgados controlled the story. Every day, another post from Rosa or Miguel, another round of justice for Tomas hashtags, another neighbor crossing the street to avoid me. So, against Harris's advice, I agreed to an interview. A local paper wanted my side. Harris nearly ripped his hair out. They'll twist your words, he warned. But I couldn't take being the town villain without a fight. The journalist came to my apartment, notebook ready. I told her everything, how the family asked for impossible things, how I refused respectfully, how Tomas lunged and slipped. I told her I'd never laid a hand on him, that my whole career was built on respect. She listened, nodded, scribbled notes. I thought maybe I'd finally been heard. The article came out 2 days later. Headline, Crematorium worker defends himself, I didn't push him. But the quotes they pulled made me sound cold, defensive, almost smug. The Delgados were quoted to Rosa saying I was twisting facts to save face, Miguel calling me a danger to grieving families. The comments section was brutal. Of course he'd deny it. Look at his eyes, you can tell he's lying. Imagine trusting him with your loved one. It was worse than silence. And then the real fear began. One night, coming back from Harris's office, I noticed a car following me. Not close enough to be obvious, but always there when I turned. When I pulled into my apartment lot, it idled at the curb. Dark sedan, tinted windows. After a long minute, it rolled off. Another night, I found a note taped to my door, ashes to ashes, you're next. I showed Harris, but he just sighed. Without proof of who's behind it, the cops won't care. Proof. That word kept ringing in my head. Proof was all I needed, but proof was the one thing I didn't have. So I decided if nobody else would look for it, I would. I started calling every guest from that funeral whose number I could dig up. Most hung up on me. A few cursed me out. But one woman, a cousin I barely remembered, hesitated. I don't want trouble, she whispered. But you didn't touch him. I saw it. He slipped. My heart leapt. Would you be willing to say that officially? Silence on the line. Then, let me think about it. Click. I sat there staring at my phone in the dark, shaking. Let me think about it. It wasn't much. But it was something. Meanwhile, the threats escalated. I'd find chalk scrawls on the sidewalk outside my apartment, burn liar burn. I'd hear footsteps in the hall at night, stopping outside my door, then fading away. And one night, when I looked out my window at 2 a.m., I saw Eddie Delgado himself leaning against a car across the street, smoking, staring up at my window like he was already planning my funeral. That's when it hit me, this wasn't about money or lawsuits anymore. This was personal. And if I didn't find a way to expose the truth soon, the next body in a crematorium furnace might be mine. After that night with Eddie staring up at my window, I couldn't sleep. Every creak in the building, every hum of the pipes felt like someone breaking in. I started leaving the lights on, baseball bat propped against the wall, phone fully charged on the nightstand. I wasn't just paranoid, I was preparing. Harris noticed the bags under my eyes at our next meeting. You look like hell, he muttered, flipping through a folder. You can't let them get to you like this. They're already getting to me, I shot back. They're following me. Leaving notes. Eddie was outside my apartment last night. Do you have proof? He asked without looking up. That word again. Proof. Without it, everything was just noise. Still, Harris wasn't useless. He'd managed to pull together the beginnings of a case, Raphael's statement, the priest's testimony, and a voicemail from one anonymous cousin who muttered, he slipped. He slipped, before hanging up. Not enough to win, but enough to plant doubt. But I knew doubt wouldn't stop Eddie. Doubt wouldn't keep Rosa from poisoning the town against me. I needed someone solid, someone who would stand up and say it loud. So I went back to the woman who had said she saw it, Elena, a cousin of the Delgados. I found her number again and called. She answered, voice trembling. I told you, I don't want to get involved, she said immediately. You already are, I said softly. They're using you as part of their story, whether you speak or not. I'm begging you, Elena. Please. You saw what happened. You know I didn't touch him. If you don't say something, they'll bury me alive. Silence. Then, finally, meet me tomorrow. But not at my house. They can't know. We met in a diner 2 towns over. She looked exhausted, like she hadn't slept either. Over coffee she whispered, it wasn't your fault. He lunged at you. I saw it. But if I testify, Rosa will cut me off forever. She'll tell everyone I betrayed the family. I leaned in. If you don't, I lose everything. Please. Just tell the truth. She didn't promise, but when we parted, she pressed my hand. I'll think about it. It wasn't enough, but it was something. That night, hope flickered for the first time in weeks. But hope didn't last. On my way home, I stopped at a gas station. As I walked back to my car, I heard footsteps behind me. Too fast. Too close. I turned, and 2 men in hoodies closed in. One shoved me hard against the car, the other hissed in my ear, stay quiet. Drop the case. Or next time, you burn. I struggled, elbowing one in the ribs, but they vanished into the night before I could get a good look. My hands shook as I dialed 911. The cops arrived, took my statement, shrugged. No cameras here. No clear description. Could have been anyone. Could have been anyone? I snapped. It was them. You know it was them. The officer just sighed. Without proof, sir, our hands are tied. Proof. Always proof. I drove home with adrenaline still buzzing in my veins, knuckles sore from swinging. As I pulled into my lot, I noticed something on my door. A small box. Inside, a pile of gray ash. No note. Just ash. I stood there staring at it, the cold night air biting at my skin, and realized something terrifying. They weren't just trying to ruin me anymore. They were sending me a message: we know exactly where you live. And we know exactly how you'll end up. The box of ashes on my doorstep was the breaking point. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my chair with the bat across my lap, watching the shadows move across the walls until the sun rose. By morning, I felt hollow, like something inside me had already burned away. Harris showed up at my apartment later that day with a stack of papers. Pretrial is in 2 weeks, he said, setting them on the table. We need everything lined up: witnesses, statements, anything that shows you didn't lay a hand on Tomas. I told him about Elena, about her maybe agreeing to testify. Harris frowned. Maybe doesn't win cases. We need a firm yes. As if on cue, my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. A video link. Against my better judgment, I tapped it. It was footage from the funeral again, but edited this time. The shaky phone video had been slowed down, zoomed in, and cut right at the moment Tomas lunged. From the angle, it looked exactly like my hand was on his back. A caption in bold letters read, "Clear proof." He shoved him. My blood ran cold. This wasn't just rumor anymore. This was fabrication. Harris cursed when I showed him. They're playing dirty. Anyone with eyes can see the clip is manipulated, but to the public? It'll look like smoking gun evidence. And it did. Within hours, it was everywhere. Comments flooded in: "Monster caught red-handed. Lock him up." Even people I'd known for years posted about how disappointed they were. The crematorium director called me that night. "Don't ever come back here," he said flatly. "Clients are threatening boycotts. Staff are threatening to quit. We can't be associated with you anymore." He didn't even say goodbye before hanging up. My reputation was gone. But the final blow came the next day. I got a call from my landlord. "I've had complaints," he said nervously. "Strange people hanging around. Threats in the lobby. I can't risk the other tenants' safety. You've got 30 days to move out." Thrown out of work. Thrown out of my home. All because I refused to sew a smile on a dead man's face. That night, as I packed boxes in silence, my phone rang again. "Elena." Her voice shook. "I can't stay quiet anymore. I saw it. You didn't touch him." He slipped. "I'll testify." For the first time in weeks, my chest loosened. Hope sparked again. But Harris's words echoed in my head: "They'll come for anyone who sides with you." I looked out my window at the dark street below and whispered into the phone, "Elena, be careful." Because if the Delgados had already destroyed my job, my home, my reputation, what would they do to the one person brave enough to stand against them? The courthouse smelled like old wood and nerves. Harris walked beside me, jaw tight, suit slightly rumpled. "This is it," he muttered. "Pre-trial. If the judge tosses it, we walk. If not, then it's all-out war." The Delgados were already there when we entered. Rosa in her black dress, Miguel with his arms crossed like a bouncer, Tomas with his sling, still milking that shoulder weeks later. Eddie leaned in the back, chewing gum, glaring at me like he wanted me in the ground. The room buzzed with reporters, family friends, strangers who just wanted drama. The judge took the bench, and silence fell. Luis's lawyer went first, painting me as unstable, arrogant, even dangerous. He played the edited video on a screen for everyone to see, pausing right at the frame that looked like my hand shoved Tomas. Gasps echoed in the courtroom. The lawyer spread his hands dramatically. This man disrespected a grieving family and assaulted a son at his own father's funeral. He cannot be trusted in this profession, or in this community. My stomach turned. Harris leaned close. "Don't react. Just wait." Then it was our turn. Harris stood tall, voice calm but sharp. He played the full video, uncut. It showed Tomas lunging toward me, me stepping back, and then Tomas losing his balance. "This is the truth," Harris said firmly. "No shove. No assault. Just a man protecting himself from being grabbed." Then he called Elena. My heart pounded as she walked to the stand. She looked terrified, glancing at Rosa before facing the judge. Her voice trembled at first, then steadied. "I was there. I saw it. He didn't push Tomas. Tomas lunged, lost his footing, and fell. That's all. gasps again, but this time on my side. Rosa's face twisted, Miguel muttered something under his breath, Tomas clenched his jaw. The priest followed, collar gleaming under the lights. I too witnessed it. No shove. Just a tragic accident. Harris finished with a quiet statement, my client has dedicated his life to treating the deceased with dignity and their families with compassion. He does not deserve to be destroyed by lies. The judge tapped his pen, looked between the families, then spoke. There are conflicting accounts, yes. But multiple witnesses confirmed the defendant's story. The uncut video corroborates it. This court finds insufficient evidence to proceed with criminal charges. Civil matters may continue, but as of now, this case is dismissed. The gavel came down like thunder. I exhaled for what felt like the first time in weeks. Harris squeezed my shoulder. We did it. But the Delgados weren't finished. Rosa shot to her feet, pointing at me. This isn't over. Everyone knows what you are. Everyone knows what you did. Miguel joined in, shouting. Eddie slammed his fist against the bench so hard a bailiff rushed over. The judge's gavel cracked again, demanding order. I didn't hear the rest. My ears were ringing, my pulse pounding. I stumbled out of the courtroom into the cold air, my chest heaving. Free. At least for now. No prison. No charges. But my job was still gone, my home still gone, my reputation still in ashes. As Harris lit a cigarette on the courthouse steps, he muttered, they can't touch you legally anymore. But don't expect them to stop. I nodded, staring at the sky. He was right. The Delgados had lost in court, but they'd already won in the court of public opinion. To half the town, I'd always be the guy who shoved a grieving son into his father's casket. And maybe that was the cruelest part of all. In my line of work, respect is everything. And once it burns, there's no bringing it back. I walked away that day with no job, no clear future, and no peace. But I was still standing. And sometimes, in this business, survival is the only victory you get.